A few weeks ago, I raced the London Marathon for the first time in the elite women's field, and it was a ride. It was a journey. Going into it pre-race, I was coming off the back of the best training block of my life. The highest volume I'd ever achieved. I was the fittest I'd ever been, and because of that, we set ourselves some scary and lofty goals, and we decided to take a swing at the London Marathon. No risk, no reward. And these are the goals that I had for that race. Run the London Marathon, essentially start and finish the thing. Come top 3 in the British field, top 10 in the elite women's field, and snag the World Championships qualifying time, which is 2 hours and 23 minutes and 30 seconds. That would have been over 2 minutes off my PB. And a few days before the race, laying those goals out, looking at the weather forecast, looking at the field in front of me, looking at the position I was in, I felt confident that on the right day, if I pulled everything off, that was possible. Spoiler alert, that's not what happened. But I have no regrets. I'm a big believer that when your goals don't come off, you sometimes learn even more than if they did, which is going to be invaluable going forward because I've got a long marathon career ahead of me. So let's get into it, shall we? Before I get into the recap, I have a request for you. Please hit the subscribe button because this might be the end of the London Marathon story for now, but it's not the end of the story. There's going to be another marathon later this year, and there's going to be more marathons after that, and hopefully I'm going to go to the Olympics one day, and also, who knows what's to come. Something I do know is we are going to keep documenting it for you, and I would love it if you came along for the ride. That's my pitch. I need to be hydrated for this one. The London Marathon. What went wrong, what went right, and what's next? If you watched the build up to the London Marathon, you saw the training sessions, you saw the highest mileage I'd ever done. I spoke a lot about that and how we were in uncharted territory, but in a really good way, and I felt like I'd tapped into new levels of fitness. 100+ miles a week, body for the most part held up, and I was really excited to see what that meant going into a race. However, in the last few weeks of the marathon block, I did pick up a niggle in my back. I'm still working on it now, to be honest. Who'd have thought? Running a marathon and then resting for a little bit afterwards doesn't just delete all the problems you had before the marathon. That's ridiculous. My QL on the right side of my back got very tight. We're not sure why. I'm still working on figuring that out with my physio and also figuring out how I can strengthen the area to hopefully help alleviate that. But the knock-on effect from that meant that my hip got very tight and my glute got very tight on one side, and that kind of restricted my movement and became very painful towards the end of long sessions. We were able to get it into a really good place before the marathon by having a couple of treatment sessions going in, but probably needed another week and another treatment session. So partway through the race, that inevitably cropped up and didn't feel very good. I don't think it's the full story for why my race didn't go to plan, but it's a factor. And as you'll learn throughout this video, I think factors kind of stack on top of one another. They're not excuses, they are just facts. They are things that were on my plate on the day that we had to adapt to, react to as best we can. That's racing and that's marathon running for you. I don't think I've ever felt perfect going into a race, but sometimes the coin flips and you get better or worse luck with it. Rewinding then to the start of the race. Yes, there's things going on beforehand and leading into it, but your performance on the day starts when that gun goes off. I had the plan of sticking with the pace group that was going for the World Championship standard, 2 hours, 23 minutes and 30 seconds, to 2:24, that was the B standard. I knew that Rose Harvey and Charlotte Purdue, who are 2 other British athletes, and a couple of other athletes in the race were also keen to go for that time. Great, I thought. We have 2 pacemakers in this group, 5 athletes. We're gonna have a great group of girls to work with to help each other for as long as the race as we can, until it becomes the gloves are off, let's race, someone makes a move, someone tries to respond to a move. In an ideal world, maybe we're together until 20 miles. That would be nice. Wishful thinking. If only. I did have a group in that pace group with those athletes. That was the case until about 10K when a few people broke off to go faster. One of the pacemakers actually went down the road and a couple of athletes went with them. Another athlete dropped off the back of the group and it ended up being me, Rose, and Amy, who was our pacemaker. And at this point I was aware that we were on the slower end of the world standard, probably the 2:24 sort of end of things for the B standard, but I knew how I felt in my body and I knew that it was already pretty warm, and that felt like the right call, versus going down the road with the other pacemaker and the other two athletes who had effectively sort of split our group in half. Definitely the right call because of what happened next. At around 9.5 miles, I realized over several minutes that I was working too hard too early into the race. How do I know that? I'm very in tune with my body from the many workouts and many races I've done in the past, and not listening to those signals would mean not learning from past mistakes. Gradually, over the next few miles, I could feel my back starting to tighten up. So the right call for me was to just regroup a little bit. Regrouping in this sense is kind of the opposite of regrouping because it meant dropping off that group or that trio of us. Taking a minute to sort of reset on my own. At the time, thinking positively, I thought, I'm just gonna ease off for a mile or so. I'm gonna keep Rose and Amy in my sights, and I'm not gonna let that gap open up, and I might even catch them up. I just need to reset, gather myself, make sure that I'm okay, and then lock in. And up until that point in the race, thoroughly enjoying myself. Feeling focused, locked in control, optimistic, and just enjoying running the London Marathon. Coming past Cutty Sark at 6.5 miles was insane. That was the first point at which I sort of felt the energy of the crowds being 3-4 rows deep. And I can remember running through there with a big smile on my face and kind of remembering to take it in, which is important because I wanted to do that at this race. So I'm alone now. It's 10 miles in and I get to Tower Bridge at 12 and a half. I'm still grappling with that feeling of wanting to reset and find my rhythm again, and it's not quite happening. My back is tightening up even more, and I think it's dawning on me that this probably isn't going to be the race that I wanted it to be, but it could still be a really good day. I was still feeling really optimistic that I could pull a PB out of the bag and grind it home. Tower Bridge was also incredible. I feel like I didn't take it in as much as I did at Cutty Sark because I was slightly distracted by the pain that I was already in. 12 miles into a marathon, way too early to be focusing on that. You kind of want to get to halfway a little bit bored and ready to kick on in the business end of things. And I crossed the halfway mark and looked at the clock, did some maths, and realized that if I repeated what I'd just done, I would run 2 hours, 25 minutes and 40 seconds, which would be a 7-second PB. And I thought, it's still possible. I could just repeat what I've just done. But at that point, I'd been slowing down for the last 3 miles. So possible, yes, but very unlikely. And I think that's where probably the race enters, well, it enters the second half. You can probably cut my race in half as a tale of two halves from the start until Tower Bridge, and I'm kind of going through that transition from 9.5 miles until the halfway point just after Tower Bridge, and then the second half. Which is weird because normally when I do these race recap videos, I'm breaking it down into, this is how I felt in the first 5K and this is what I was doing, and then I locked in and got to halfway and these were the things I was picking up on and thinking about, and then, there's a lot more sections of the race when it goes well, I think. And I really don't have a lot for you to sort of describe that second half because it all felt the same. It was 13 miles of just kind of fighting myself, fighting the desire to stop, fighting the pain that I didn't want to focus on because the more you think about it, the worse it gets. But at the same time, when I tried to be positive, kind of tell myself, okay, the pace is out the window, but let's not completely let go. Let's try and run 550 per mile instead of 555s. Let's fight for those seconds. They all add up. I would get that into my head and take on the energy of the crowd and try and push for those seconds. And I would get an immediate reaction from my back where it would just seize up, which was really tough. And I think in the early part of that second half, I felt probably more defeated than towards the end of it, which is weird because, 20 something miles in, you've been enduring that for even longer. But I think I knew the drill by that point. And the earlier parts of the second half, I was probably kind of dealing with and processing, letting go of the dream race that I really wanted to have. I really don't want this video to be super negative and all doom and gloom because it's really not. I truly believe that there's a lot of learning to take forward from this. I don't have any regrets. I still look at London as a positive experience, but at the time of filming, I am kind of more down and sad about how it went than I was immediately after London or for the whole week straight after London. And I think that's just kind of where my head's at and where I'm at with processing the 3 months of training that went into this one race and then how it panned out. Some of the things that have happened in my personal life after the race. I'm sorry if I'm not as high energy as I usually am. I'm a little bit sad, and I think it's important to be real with that, but also remind you and myself that there are so many positives to take from this. Highlights being seeing some of my friends and family out there, the crowds absolutely being the reason that I kept running and that I finished the race. There's not like much I can break it down to in terms of the performance. Like, it was just left foot, right foot, keep going, Phily, get to the next mile marker, get to the next bottle, finish this race. And if I had to pick my favorite part of the race, it would actually be around the 23-24 mile mark. I am in the pits, the depths of hating my life and being in so much pain and feeling so slow and really wanting to stop. But I come down and on my right, I have the spectators cheering next to the road. They're going nuts. They're amazing. On my left, I have runners in the masses, just crossing the halfway mark, going out to do the bit of the course that I just did. And some of these runners, who are halfway into their own race, start cheering me on. I'm completely solo, have been since 9.5 miles. Some of you were stopping your race to come up to the railings and shout at me and shout love the grind. Others carried on running, but were sort of cheering for me and clapping and encouraging me. And it's a good job I had the shades on, because I started to well up at that point, because I just couldn't believe that so many of you were, yeah. I just felt very loved, and that is a really special memory. Having a bunch of you waste energy when you should be focusing on your own race, cheering me on. And a few people have messaged me afterwards to say that it was like a real highlight of their race as well, which is, yeah, really cool. I'm really sorry, he's using the jet washer and we just got it, and I'm just gonna have to go and test it out. My ADHD can't. Yeah! And now my feet are wet. Hopefully, most of you at this point have watched the race video and know the result. If you haven't, this is your time to pause this video and go and watch the race video. Daniel did a really good job with it, so I would recommend. I crossed the finish line in 11th place in the elite women's field. I was third Brit out of those elite women, and I ran a time of 2 hours, 30 minutes and 34 seconds, I think. 28 seconds. Look at me go. Not what I came for. About 6 or 7 minutes off what I came for. And my second slowest marathon ever. The only marathon that I have run that was slower than London was my debut in Seville, when I ran 2:34. So not super proud of the time, and that's okay. But I am super proud of myself for gritting it out and loving the grind, even when it would have been much easier, much nicer to just step off and stop, which I did consider doing. But upon considering doing that, I thought about how I'd feel giving up and how I'd feel going into my next marathon, knowing that I wasn't brave enough to fight through the pain and finish the previous one. So yeah, I'm proud of finishing. That formed a lot of my immediate reactions, similar to how I felt after Houston. I'd processed a lot of the kind of sadness of letting go of my goals partway through the race, and was just proud of myself for gritting it out and being tough. Running solo for 17 miles is not fun, and is not something that I wish to do again in the future if I can help it. And I think that's one of the things I learned about this race. London is one of the few marathons where there is a women's only start line at the start in terms of the elite field. You're never going to know who's going to be there and who's going to be around your level and around your time, but it's something to consider for the future, not being able to have just more bodies around you. It's not just the fact that we don't have the sub-elite men running with us, which, you know, I had in Berlin, I had in Copenhagen. It's the fact that there's like 15 of you on the start line, and that's it. And what are the chances that any of those 15 individuals are going to have much company for much of the race? Because over 26 miles, things get spread out pretty quickly. I know Ailish ran a lot of the race on her own as well. Rose, after Amy had dropped out from pacing, ran solo, and it's tough. It's really hard to hold your own pace and kind of keep that positive momentum going when you don't have someone behind you pushing you, someone in front of you perhaps taking the wind, or just a group to work off. It's a real disadvantage. I've done a really good job of getting into a really good place mentally for peak performance. Working with my sports psychologist before the race, being in a place where I'm confident enough to take a big swing, which felt like a really big deal, and I'm really proud of myself for that. But I've neglected the post-race mental side of things. That's as much a part of the learning from this race as the stuff that went wrong beforehand or during the race, because this is a continuous journey, and I think it's important to zoom out and look at it like that. This is a chapter, hopefully leading up to the LA Olympics and beyond, and the next race will be another chapter. Berlin was the previous chapter, and how you kind of treat yourself in between those races, it's a continuum, and it matters. I think we can be our own worst enemy sometimes, because we're always looking to the next thing and trying to cram fun stuff in. And the last few weeks have been fun, but I have been doing too much. It's not as simple as, oh, I'm not running as much, so I have all this free time and I can say yes to everything and go on these different trips and socialize more and genuinely have a lot of fun in all of that, but leave no time in between all of it for myself to decompress, process what's just happened, be there for my family when we are all grieving at the moment. That's maybe more of a wider peace kind of realization that we are 2.5 years into content creation and being a professional athlete, being what we do. And I say we, Daniel's not a professional athlete, but he is there through all of it. And it's a lot. Working 7 days a week in some capacity, whether that's just for a few hours here or there, is not sustainable and doesn't leave any time for just existing, let alone relaxing, which is really important. I'm gonna be here working on that over the next few weeks as well. Please hold me to it. If it looks like I'm doing too much, tell me off, okay? It's easier to do more than it is less. This is what I'm realizing. So whilst I'm easing back in, ramping up the easy mileage, getting closer to doing my first workout, hopefully soon, but not too soon, because recovery is key. It'll probably be roughly 1 month post-race. I'm prioritizing working on the things that I need to get right to be able to be firing on all cylinders and going again, hopefully later this year. And that is why I ask you to come along, because it might be the end of the London series, but it's not the end of the extended series of running fast, having fun, ticking off more marathons, and getting closer to the ultimate goal, getting the Olympic rings tattoo. So subscribe if you haven't yet, and come back to find out exactly what's next, because I'm plotting and can't wait to bring you along. 2025 ain't over yet.